I have a few visual aids with me tonight, and the trouble with a sort of elaborate fantasy novel is, I'm going to read from the middle of it tonight, is trying to explain the backstory. So there are really only three things you need to know about the world of the Philosopher's Flight. The first one is that magic, and nobody calls it magic, it's empirical philosophy, but magic was discovered about 100 years before the events in the novel, which take place in America around the time of the First World War. The second thing you should know is that women are a lot better at magic than men, and that's been a fact met with a lot of resentment and suspicion and hostility over the previous 100 years in the book. And the last is that the protagonist is one of the sort of rare men who is good at magic or empirical philosophy, which is also called sigilry, which is a sort of more common term for it. So Robert, through a series of accidents and good luck and hard work, has won a scholarship to study at a place where you study a traditionally women's field, which is Radcliffe College in Boston. Robert is a flyer. It's a sort of higher end type of magic that he performs. And a lot of people Monday night, when I read in Madison, were having trouble describing it, so I brought some visual aids with me tonight. All right, so important to the part tonight is the idea of the harness that he wears, which is loosely based on the idea of a parachute harness. And the idea behind that is you need something both when you're carrying a passenger to keep them strapped to you, and in order to do magic you draw sigils, which are sort of magical symbols, and use powder to do that. So the device he has is based actually on a pastry bag. This is one that my wife kindly donated for purposes of readings. So you load the powder into a sort of large canvas or burlap bag that's semi-waterproof, and then draw with the powder as it flows out of the regulator on the end to ensure uniform powder flow. The magical symbols to launch yourself into the air and then continue flying. So flyers generally will fly head down, sort of like Superman, unless they're carrying a passenger, in which case they're stuck in a more head-up position, which is a lot less comfortable. I think that's everything you need to know in terms of background. My publisher kindly produced a brief introductory guide to drawing sigils in case you want to try your hand at it later. So I'm reading from the middle. If you're following along at home, this is page 215. There are two or three characters who are mentioned. Essie is a friend of Robert's. She is a more conventional young lady at Radcliffe and one of the better behaved characters. Professor Brock is the sort of head professor of hovering or flying. And rescue and evacuation is an elite military formation which has been made up entirely of women up to this point, but it is one that Robert has always dreamed of joining. His mother, who's a veteran a military veteran and a veteran of that group, has sort of been his hero growing up, and that's what she did for about 20 years back during the time of the Franco-Prussian War and the Spanish-American War. The following week brought with it further miracles and wonders. Brock reopened the aerodrome and unveiled our new hovering instructors, 10 Corps veterans who'd been pensioned off due to age. All of the Radcliffe women who were still interested in flying assembled on the landing field to be divided up among the old crones. One after the next, the instructors stepped forward to call out the names of their trainees and lead them into the aerodrome. But my name wasn't on any of the lists. I would have thought I was being singled out again, but Essie was left unassigned too. We stood alone on the field looking for some indication of what we were supposed to do. Bookkeeping error? I suggested. Essie chewed at her lip. An ancient lady leaning heavily on a cane hobbled out of the aerodrome. She wore thick spectacles and had a pair of field glasses on a leather strap around her neck. She hadn't been introduced with the other instructors. She stopped in front of us and straightened painfully. "Well, this is a sorry state of affairs," she drawled. "Out of this entire aerodrome, only 2 hoverers have dared mule the phrase rescue and evacuation in connection with their own names. One has fewer flight hours than any of my great-grandchildren, and the other has a phallus." Essie blushed to hear such coarse language. The old woman pointed at her. "You're Sarah Stewart?" "Ma'am, I go by Essie if..." "That's a weak name, a child's name. Stop using it. Now get kitted out and scout me 3 different landing approaches to Harvard Square." "Oh, ma'am, we're not permitted to hover between..." "The Cambridge Police Department has no way to catch you. I want you to land and then record on paper 3 approaches with compass headings and lists of potential obstructions for each. Give it to me in 1 hour. Get a bag and get up." If Essie was torn about committing a technically illegal act, she overcame her doubts quickly. She trotted toward the aerodrome. "Run!" the woman bellowed. Essie accelerated to a sprint. "And you," the old lady said, "let me see if I have this straight. Conducted a solo search and rescue mission over rough country in Montana and lifted out 3 souls. Dove into the river to save a drowning hoverer, ran a mass casualty evacuation on 0 minutes notice, and flew a goddamn 40-foot stringer. I would say that just about makes you the best male flyer in the world, doesn't it?" No, ma'am," I said. "Oh, Mother Mary, but he doesn't understand. Child, I was in the Corps 55 years. That's since before the modern hovering was invented, to save you the math. Back in 11, they said to me, 'Gertrude, you're too old to fly.' So I instructed at Fort McConnell. Then this year they said, 'Gertrude, you're too mean to teach. We've got a war on and we don't want every 3rd girl quitting.' So they retired me. Janet Brock, with all her gold medals and monographs and professor of such and such, said she had a man worth training, a man for the Corps, for rescue and evacuation. What better revenge for invaliding me out than to dump on them a man who's too good to refuse? So, do you think a woman of my prodigious experience would waste her golden years on anything less than the finest male flyer on earth?" No, ma'am," I said. "Good. I want you to believe it, I want you to train like it, and if you choose not to boast about it, then that's your business." As if I would dare say such a thing aloud at the aerodrome. "Show me your hands," Gertrude said. I extended my hands for her. I had dirt under my nails and calluses all rough and yellowed, but she wasn't checking for cleanliness. She produced a tape measure from the work bag at her hip and measured my thumb and index finger, then across my palm in several different dimensions. "You have lovely, long, girlish fingers," she said, nodding her approval. "Do you know how to fly a lever regulator?" "Grew up with them," I answered. "Then no more of the dial reg trash they favor here. You'll fly a Chesapeake Mark 20 lever regulator with 2-inch conical tip, 3-twist burr, bored to 80 mil. I don't think we have." "Janet found a used one. She ground the tips herself. Now kneel or I won't be able to reach." I knelt and she made further measurements across my neck, chest, hips, thighs, belly, and shoulders, recording each with the stub of a pencil in a little book. "Beg your pardon," she murmured. She put the field glasses to her eyes in time to see Essie dash out of the aerodrome in full harness. "Run, run, run!" the woman bellowed. Essie flung herself into the air. The old lady checked her wrist chronometer. 6 minutes, 40 seconds to kid out, and then a 3-step launch. Christ, in a fish barrel. And she flies pretty. God damn it. She turned back to me. "Brown or black?" she asked. "Excuse me?" "You're riding a Springfield harness with a lot of homemade improvements?" "Yes," I said. "Not anymore. We're bringing you into the 20th century. Janet should have had you in custom tackle from the day you came in." I can't afford it." "You're not paying for it. Brown leather or black?" "Brown." She noted that too and then put her book away. "What do you weigh first thing in the morning, naked, after you've voided?" She didn't mean anything untoward by it, and I didn't take it that way. "I'm not sure," I said. "I don't have a..." "Then buy a scale later today. Give me an estimate." 211. She winced. "You stand 72.5 inches high. I don't want to fly you above 186 pounds. Are you going to faint on me at that weight?" "Probably not," I said. "Then you're on a diet starting this morning, unless you care to dabble in transporting to improve your figure. I don't judge. Powder flow for your current weight will be 8.9 ounces per minute." I was aghast at the powder expenditure, not her comments regarding weight loss, which was simple physics. "A little more cornmeal than you used back home?" she asked. 4 times more, I said. I'd be burning through powder like mad. You're not paying for that either. Then she laid herself down on the ground. Prove you're worth the effort. I'll play the role of your casualty. As fast as you can, I want you to run into that building, kit out, and grab whatever style of harness you intend to fly me on. Then launch, take me 2 miles out to sea, turn, and land back here. And oh shoot, you happen to be out of silver chloride this morning, so fly me awake. Clear? Perfectly. Then run, she bellowed. I grabbed my harness and sprinted for the aerodrome. And if you can't do this in half the time it took that little daddy's girl, I'm sending you straight back to the farm. I sprinted harder. There was a line of women snaking out the door waiting to draw powder and equipment. One of the other old sigil women watched my approach. Clear the way for a hot evac, she yelled. The girls stepped aside to let me through. Professor Brock was behind the counter. 12-pound general purpose bag, I panted. Chesapeake 20-ounce regulator with the 2-inch. Fine, fine. Professor Brock sat and handed over the items she'd had waiting right beside her. I'd already slipped into my harness and was cinching down the leg straps. I hope you're enjoying yourself, Brock said. I had to message every in a 20-foot loop of 1-inch cotton webbing. Brock looked flummoxed. Oh, come on, I said. I attached my bag to my hip as Brock pulled out the aerodrome's catalog to see where we stocked such a piece of rigging. The old lady at the door laughed. She took a cloth bag from her belt and tossed it underhand to me. Gertrude, 74 years old, the only slightly younger woman said, be gentle. Yes, ma'am, I answered and ran back out. I shook the webbing out of its bag. It was nothing more than a single long strap with the ends sewn together, but it made the world's quickest harness. I skidded to a stop next to Gertrude, who was lying flat on her back, and laid out the webbing in a circle around her. Oh, for the love of St. Jude, are you serious? A web harness? You said as fast as I could, I gasped. So do it. My 3-year-old kindly donated Elliot the doll for this part. So this is actually based on a simple rope trick I learned in a heavy rescue class during my EMT days, but it makes a very quick harness in case you ever need to drag someone or lower someone out a window. Okay, so your 20-foot rope or strap goes in a circle around the casualty. You pull it up between the legs and over the belly. Then you reach under the armpits through the loop. And you keep it on, and you have a harness. I yanked a loop of webbing between her feet and up between her legs, then reached through to pull the strap up from under her armpits. I hauled her to her feet and clipped her to my harness so we were chest to chest, the old lover's clinch position, undignified but fast. Go, she barked. I launched, trying to make it gentle, then poured on speed as I rushed toward the Atlantic. I was unbalanced, my regulator was unfamiliar, and the powder flow rate was absurd. I struggled to keep us on the level. We reached the ocean in 3 minutes. I turned and reversed course. You okay? I asked. Had worse, she replied. Mind me asking? Ever land like this? Nope. Over the field, I descended briskly. I have bad hips, Gertrude warned. Bad ankles, bad knees. I cut her vertical speed and splayed my feet wide so that she touched down first. This had the unintended consequence of thrusting my pelvis right into her bosom. I brought my legs down, crumpling into a crouch to support her. I had to grab her rump to keep us from toppling over. Some bright young thing gave us a wolf whistle. Quiet on the field, Gertrude bellowed. I unclipped her and retrieved her cane. She polished her glasses and set them back on her nose. Wonderful that at my age I should experience something new, she proclaimed. Are you married, Mr. Weeks? I blushed crimson. No, ma'am. I'm so terribly sorry that I touched. Sorry, nothing. I've grabbed every last piece of wounded soldiers to get them up and down. No, Mr. Weeks, you misunderstand. Better for you if you were married. Go pick one of those pretty girls, make lots of babies, girl babies, if you please, and teach them to fly. Your daughters will be brilliant. Was I that bad? He asked. No, you dumbass, you're adequate. A woman who flew like that could get a test at Fort Putnam tomorrow. She'd be in France by Christmas. If you were shorter, I'd suggest a wig and a set of bosom pads, but you'd never pass for a lady. So for you, a man, to join R&E, you're going to have to fly perfect. And that's a miserable existence. I wouldn't wish it on you. Go settle down instead. I had a brief vision of Danielle and me with a brood of daughters, all of them with dark wavy hair and perpetual frowns, scolding me on some point of politics and then flying rings around me. I rather liked it, but not just yet. I came to fly, I said. Gertrude nodded as if it would have been impossible for me to answer differently. Then fly it again unladen at best speed and show me your hottest landing. I did a one-step launch and might have touched 200 miles per hour on my return leg. I blistered in for a direct approach and landed with a smart angle and tuck. No, Gertrude screamed. What was that? It was an angle and tuck. No, hot landing. Hot. Do you know what that means? Like a flashy, hot landing field, like I'm drawing a bead on you with a rifle. Quick to the ground. If I can hit you 6 times with a flintlock musket, that's not hot. Do you know a flare and settle landing? Of course. Then show it to me. I have a machine gun. I'm trying to kill you. So fast to the ground. The flare and settle, which involved flipping upside down to speed up the approach, was my least favorite landing. Too much potential for hitting the ground face first if you didn't flip back upright quickly enough. But I climbed to 400 feet, pitched head down, and dove. I could see Gertrude leveling her cane at me like it was a gun. At 100 feet, I began frantically backdrawing my sigil for counterthrust. A few feet above the ground, I kicked upright, leveled out, and hit the ground hard enough to jostle my teeth. No, Gertrude screamed. That was an upside-down angle and tuck with a terrible touch. Who taught you that horror? I flushed with anger and humiliation. My sister. And the old woman softened as if she understood me for the first time. And she was 12 years old, 16, I think. Babies teaching babies to fly, it's the worst kind of sin, and one will never stop repeating. But you've got to learn it right. You own a copy of Tintinelli's Hovering Emergencies and Recovery? Yes. They shot a beautiful series of photographs with a high-speed camera, the body in each position, the flare and settle. Learn it, know it cold for tomorrow. It's a landing that can kill you or save you. Oh, for heaven's sake. Essie was running up to us. In her hand she had a piece of paper, rolled and tied with a hair ribbon, which she pressed into Gertrude's hand. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Essie said. Oh, sweet Jesus in his bedroom slippers, what did you... And Gertrude unrolled the paper to find a charming little hand-drawn map of Harvard Square. The buildings cross-hatched with contrasting blue and black ink, the approaches labeled with Essie's immaculate copperplate script. You made it pretty. What did you do that for? You won't have 2 fountain pens on the front lines. You won't have time to blot it and wait for the ink to dry. Redo it in pencil. Make it ugly, then land all 3 approaches. Ma'am, said Essie, it's the middle of rush hour. It's going to be... They'll get out of the way for you. Go. Essie launched without further objection. Gertrude returned her attention to me. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, flare and settle. Until you learn it, you're rated at 2. You don't fly without my personal supervision. That's not how. It's how it works starting today. Now go stow your gear in your locker. Oh, I don't have a locker, I said. Most of the women felt... I don't care how they feel. I count 8 souls evacuated in your life. That makes you the ranking member of the aerodrome. So you're assigned locker number 1. There's going to be an uproar. It won't be any better in France. We walked to the aerodrome and paused outside the locker room. Man on deck, Gertrude roared in her sigilwoman first class's voice. 2 minutes. Make yourselves decent. There were a few shrieks and incredulous shouts, much laughter. A stream of women hurried out, but quite a few seemed willing to stand and protect their territory. Each morning, sing out, and then 2 minutes later, claim your locker, said Gertrude. I don't care what you use it for. Keep your chewing gum there, but use it every day. She glanced at her wrist chronometer. They give you problems, take it to your senior instructor, which was no solution at all. Begging your pardon, ma'am, I said, but that's Miss Rogers, and she's likely to be the one instigating the problem. Gertrude scoffed. Her aunt was a sniveling little pissant, so I can't imagine the niece is much different. Learn to manage it. She reached into her work bag and handed me a key. First locker on the left. If some ladies have chosen to remain in a state of undress, don't tell tales. She put her hands between my shoulder blades and pushed.